another evangelist who would go out and boldly preach out in the streets. And then there was men like Jonathan Edwards who would do the same thing, right? People who led revivals. And for some reason, back in the day, it was in America at least, and in Western European countries, it was easier to run evangelism by just telling people, hey, there's somebody, gather up at this parking lot or gather up at this park. There's going to be someone there talking about the Bible or talking about God, and flocks of people would just come, right? Billy Graham would start. There's a story that it made it to the New York Times where Billy Graham and the association decided, maybe in the 60s, might be in the 70s, but to hold a meeting in New York's Madison Square Garden. That started off with one meeting, right? They were just like, okay, we're just going to do one meeting, and we're going to go and proclaim the good news of the gospel, and then we're going to leave, right? This is what Billy Graham would do. They would just go to different cities, specifically major cities, and this is something that happened for years, and Billy Graham got to do. Today, not so much, but so it started off with one night, and one night turned into 2 nights, because it was too packed inside the Madison Square Garden. There was a lot of people outside, and we're like, okay, we're going to hold a second night. And that turned into 3 nights. And that turned into a whole summer. Imagine, the whole summer, Madison Square Garden, packed to the brim with people wanting to hear the gospel message, right? And so then Billy says, okay, we don't fit at the Madison, it's been 2 months, we're tired, hey, let's close it all out, let's go out with a bang, and let's hold the one last meeting at the Yankee Stadium. And so they go and then they gather up at the Yankee Stadium thinking, okay, this is going to be it. Now, one night in the Yankee Stadium, it's packed to the brim, and there's thousands of people outside that couldn't make it in because of capacity. Long story short, all summer's long, and in September, come September, they come, okay, we can't stay in New York any longer, but we're going to have one last meeting on Times Square. Have you guys ever seen on the news or for New Year's Eve, there's cameras everywhere, and Times Square is where people gather to receive the new year. And so that's where Billy Graham and the association gathered to proclaim the good news of the gospel. And man, did God do something special, and we still have churches that got started because of the Billy Graham work back in the 70s or the 60s that still exists today in New York. And so that was a great work. And so we talked about that and how evangelism by the masses would work, and how God did something special, and He would move in that certain way. And then we started talking about more modern times and how today people like Greg Laurie are some of the people that try to hold stadium-wide gatherings, and how perhaps now the popularity of people flocking into a place, people who don't know the gospel flocking into a place or a stadium to hear the gospel message is less popular, because we live in a much different world, in a more progressive world, where people believe that, this is unfortunate, but a lot of people believe they're beyond God, that their intelligence makes them exempt from needing to know truth about the Creator and about Jesus Christ. And so we live in this time where it's easier now, and this I believe in, and we talked a lot about in this evangelism class, it's easier now to invite someone to your house for dinner than it is to join you on a Sunday service. And so we started talking about, these discussions broke out in the classroom about how do we evangelize? How do we share the message of the gospel with people in today's time in an effective way? And so the bottom line is, even some of the stuff that we're talking about before we got started with the service, is there's so much hurt, there's so much bad things that go on in the world that there's absolutely no doubt that the gospel is a necessity today. It's not like, well, maybe it might do something good, or maybe it could work. No, it's not that. It's really like, no, actually people need to know that Jesus Christ died, and that the Holy Spirit can transform their hearts from darkness to light, that can bring them from death to life. And so, because there's an absolutely need today for the gospel, we started talking, okay, so how do we do it? So how are we doing this? And then they brought in one of our professors, because we had 2 professors for the class. One of them is Randy Newman. Randy Newman was a man that worked for Campus Crusades for years. And he wrote a book. The Campus Crusades has these steps, these 4 spiritual laws that they would teach the people that worked with them, Campus Crusades. There was 4 spiritual laws, and there was 4 ways to evangelize people, right? Or 4 steps that it would take to evangelize someone. And Randy Newman worked for them for 15 years. And then Randy Newman, about 5 to 10 years ago, or 7 years ago, decides, I don't think, he worked for it for 15 years, and he decides, I don't think that the whole way that Campus Crusades is, I don't think that that's going to keep working for the future, because every year that went by, there was less and less results. And so Randy Newman comes out with this book called Questioning Evangelism, which makes the New York Times, and it blows up. And so anyway, I got lucky that he ends up becoming my professor, and he says about evangelism, he says there is going to be unique ways depending on your demographic. There's going to be unique ways depending on where you live, depending on your culture, where you're basically going to have to trust that God will lead you in the most effective ways on sharing the gospel. And so we opened up this topic about prayer, where it's like, where a lot of people view prayer as a thing that we should do because it pleases God, to now like, wait. Let's hold that for a second, and let's think about what prayer really should be looked at. And basically what you're doing with prayer is you're asking God to do something that we recognize, we acknowledge, we cannot humanly possibly do. That's what prayer is. And so ever since I started talking or looking at prayer this way, the truth is I've never really had a strong prayer life. I think because, I don't know, maybe because I'm lazy, or maybe because I've been, maybe because, I'm not necessarily lazy, I'm not too lazy, but anyway, I just sleep in yesterday because I was tired. But listen to this. I remember thinking about prayer this way. I remember thinking about prayer like, okay, you go to God when you really, really, really need something. And so us in our context, if you think about your life this week, just think about your life this week. How many things did you really, really, really need that you couldn't get? Just a quick thought about this week. Was there something, could you even name 5 things this week that you really, really, really needed, but you couldn't attain, that you could not get? 5 things. Truth is, chances are, amongst all of us, we cannot come up with 5 things. Maybe 3 things. I just really needed this, dude, and I just couldn't get my hands on it. I really needed lunch on Tuesday, and I just couldn't get it. Oh, Friday, I really, 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 really needed dinner, and I just couldn't. Chances are, we cannot. It's very difficult for us to think about things that we really needed and that we couldn't get. Because we live in the States. And because we all have hardworking parents. Or we are hard workers. If we don't have our parents taking care of us anymore, like me, I have to work for myself. Anyway, chances are we just can't. And so the more you live in a world where you can get things on your own, or you think on your own, right? The perspective is, well, if you really want that dog, you just either go ask for it, or you just buy it. And if you really want those shoes, you kind of just ask for them from another human being, and you kind of get them if your parents would buy it. If you really want this like one video game, you just kind of ask for it, and it's hardly ever impossible to attain something. And so what that causes in us is the self-dependence that is natural. Now, listen to this. I'm all for being dependent in a lot of the things you really need to. For example, your homework. We shouldn't expect for mom or dad or for someone else to come down and do our homework for us, correct? We should do our homeworks ourselves. Getting dressed in the morning. Right? Like your mom shouldn't have to come in and pick out the shirt that you should wear today. Right? So there's the self-dependence, independence of others is important on a lot of things as you grow older. Right? Like this morning I had to wake up and I had to change Mattel's diaper. Well, I have to do that for him because he can't do that for himself. I also don't want him to have a wet diaper for like 2 hours in the morning. Right? So the right thing to do is to do what somebody else can't do as a father. Which leads me to my next thought. We are saturated, we are infested with the ability to do a lot of things for ourselves, which makes us subconsciously think there's no need, there's hardly a need for any supernatural power, for any God-given power to come in and help us. Because a lot of things that we can survive with every day, we can kind of grasp on our own. And so a lot of what affects prayer today is really having the perspective that I can do all these things kind of on my own. So where's God in all this? Like, how does God fit in my very busy day where a lot of it could just be done with my own strength? Right? And this happens across the board. This is not just like a me thing. This happens across the board. There is a higher consciousness of the need for prayer in places where resources are scarce. Why? Specifically, if there's a strong Christian moving in the area, a lot of people who for example, I went to Guatemala for 6 days or 7 days. I was there, and I met wonderful people. But one of the ladies that I met was this businesswoman that lived in the States, came to school at UCLA. Her mom got very sick and she had to leave. And when she left, her visa got canceled because she was out of the country for longer than she was supposed to. Her visa got canceled. And so she ends up in Guatemala. She had started a business here that was very fruitful. And then something happens with a partner of hers where the assets get frozen and she can no longer take anything back. And so she tells me, we're having coffee this one day, and my cousin's there, and she says to me, I really, really had to pray because I didn't have anything here in Guatemala. Like, she literally didn't even have a place to live. Because where her mom lived, she had like a whole bunch of family members that lived with her, and she couldn't house her daughter anymore. And so Lorena talks about how her desperate need to really pray and ask God to help her. And so now that I got there, she had like her own apartment. Her business is like starting to grow. She does like this film business stuff that is really taking off in Guatemala. It's like kind of like a new field for it. And so, but what that reminded me of is that very thing that I was kind of mingling. I was mingling my head and thinking like, yeah, that's right. We only really think about prayer when there's this very, very deep need, when we feel like, man, I've exhausted my resources, I've exhausted my abilities to get it my way, and so now I have to throw up a prayer. I have to ask God, would you help me in this thing that I can no longer help myself with? And I think that happens to all of us. And I'm not saying this should not at all be taken as a bad thing. I think this is a normal thing. I think this is something that we all go through, because that's how our minds work. But then there's Psalm chapter 4, verse 1. And I want us to be on your phone. I want you to look at this. I want you to look at this because we get a sense that you guys all know who David was in the Bible. David and Goliath, right? Do you guys know the story of David and Bathsheba? No? We'll talk about that. That's not such a Goliath story. But I get a sense that, listen, someone in Scripture who had a lot of resource. I mean, he literally didn't have a need. He had about 1,000 servants to his disposal. He had a lot of money. He was perhaps one of the most powerful leaders that has existed throughout history, especially in the old world. His name's David, right? This guy's the king. And could you imagine someone like Queen Elizabeth, right? Someone like Queen Elizabeth. Can you imagine her needing anything? Could you imagine a queen needing absolutely anything? It's very hard. In fact, could you imagine your boss who owns the business that you work for? Could you imagine them needing anything? So think about David, who's a king in a very, very powerful nation as Israel was during his time, needing anything. Yet, if we look at prayer, if we look at our communication with God being something strictly based on physical need, chances are there's very little motivation to have to do praying. Because again, back up a little bit, we live in a time, specifically in our context, where we basically have, I want to say what, 99% of the things that we really need? That 1% might be the girlfriend you really want, or the boyfriend you really want. So we live in a time where it's like what we need is very, very scarce. And if we look at God, if we look at our perspective about God is this God that just has, or has the things that we cannot get ourselves, chances are there's very little room for Him. There's very little room for Him because we hardly have a need. But yet David says this in Psalm chapter 4, verse 1, which I think it's quite the picture to get this point across here. And it says, "Hear me when I call, O God of my righteousness. You have relieved me in my distress." Verse 2, "Have mercy on me and hear my prayer." I'll read it just one more time. "Hear me when I call." This is David crying out to God, saying, "God, would you hear me? Would you hear my plea?" Notice how there's very little, there isn't this approach towards God as if David needs a physical thing. But instead, his need seems to be something internal. Even crying out, "Have mercy on me." And the reason why this topic of prayer became so live for me right now is because there's certain things, guys, like our neighbors or like that guy that bullies people at school, needing God so desperately. But it could be nearly impossible to communicate to them without the power of God being involved that they actually need to turn from what they are doing and head in a different direction. To convince them that actually there's a need of God in your heart, buddy. Because what you're doing to people is harmful and hurtful. And so these are the things that have awakened me to think, wait a minute. Chances are we might need prayer, and if we understand it in its proper context, we might use prayer a lot more than we're used to today. I had this conversation on Friday. You guys know I'm bivocational. I do accounting when I'm not speaking or doing anything church related. I do accounting and I get to work directly with business owners. And dealing with business owners is cool, but then it can get very personal. Like you start finding out things that have absolutely nothing to do with the business, but are affecting the business that have to do with personal lives. So, I'll share this story. On Friday, I have to work out of Studio City, and after Studio City, I have to drive over to Northridge. And I go to Northridge, and I'm picking up this check for these tax returns that we have to file for this business that hasn't filed since 2014. That's a really bad thing, by the way. So I get there, beautiful home, and I'm just like, all right, I gotta pick up, and I gotta leave again. And then so there's two owners, there's a guy and a gal. Used to be a married couple. They're going through some sort of separation right now. And so I walk in, and I'm just like, "Oh, hi." And she says, "Would you like a cup of water?" I said, "Sure, I'll have a cup of water." Never like to turn away. And then I kind of sense like this, I don't even know how to say it, but when someone really wants to say something and they really need to get something out of their chest, and then you look around the house and it's like, okay, there's no one here. So that might be me that has to hear this out. So she starts talking about how the party, has been in Mexico for 3 weeks. It's moving a lot of the product down that way. They're in the seafood industry. It's moving a lot of the product down to Mexico with very little accountability. And so she starts talking about. So I eventually sit down, I take a seat, and then I'm just like, man. And so how is this going to affect the business? And then she basically tells me a story of 7 years in about 15 minutes. And that ends up becoming like, she starts crying, and it's just like a lot, right? So like I'm just sitting there like, man, like I just came to pick up a check, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, CPA needs to get paid. And then it just dawned on me, it was such a hard situation where, the pastor in me kicked in, and I said, I'm very sorry. I said, and I really do, I'm very sorry that you've had to endure so much in the last 7 years, or the last 3 years, that things have gotten really difficult. And I suggested to her, I said, well, you guys have 2 little kids. Here's what I suggest. I suggest you walk away from the business. You no longer work in the operations of it. And then she says, yeah, but he would be very angry. And so all these things and I'm just like, okay, what's healthiest for you is to walk out. And then, I'll try to have a talk with him when he gets back from Mexico. And then I walk out of there, right? And after everything that I heard, I'm just like, God, is there a need for you in this place? Like, these people literally have tons and tons and tons of money. I mean, the beautiful houses. I mean, it was like a water fountain in the backyard. I'm like, dude, all that water? Like, aren't we in a drought? You know what I mean? Like, beautiful. And it just dawned on me. Like, these people have absolutely no need of physical need. They don't. The business is so... They misspend a lot of money, but it still produces so much. That's how seafood is. But their need is this internal thing that they can't. They're adults, 48 and 45-year-old, and they just can't seem to get it right. There's like this. You could sense a desperation. Where it's like, how come we can't get it right? We have a lot of money. We have a nice house. How come we can't get it right? How come we still don't feel good about this? How come we're still not at peace with this? And this is the very thing that dawned on me and said, God, yeah, how come they can't? It's the God factor. They need you so desperately. Because things cannot add up when you're created for the Creator and your life is constantly moving away from Him. Life will just not add up. You will taste, you can taste success, you can experience a lot of good, but it won't add up if God, the Creator, is missing. And here's why. Prayer is going to be extremely important for all of us to practice. Because me and you, all of us here in this room, can think about at least, I said, think about 5 needs you had this week. And I'm pretty sure we could have got up. Probably had 2, probably had 1, max 3. It's like, yeah, I couldn't really get that. I really want that girl's number, and I really couldn't get it, right? Type of need. But I guarantee you, if I ask you, think about 5 people in your circle who you directly speak to or you get to observe throughout the week, who you think might be in need of God. And I bet you anything, we would all come up. There's 4, 6, there's 7 of us in here. There's 35 people. 35 human beings who we can think of and say, I think they need God. Now, I don't know how I would tell them that they need God, but I really do think they need Him. And this is when prayer becomes the only tool. Just like some people in third world countries, the only tool they have to have a meal tomorrow is prayers that they can throw up today. For us, the dynamic is different. For us, the context is different. We don't need to pray so much for food tomorrow. It's almost guaranteed. In fact, you go to your fridge right now and you could probably prepare meals for the rest of the week if you wanted to, bless you. While there's some people in the world that have to literally pray and hope that tomorrow someone shows up with enough vegetables, with enough fruits, with enough corn to make tortillas so that they can have a meal tomorrow at noon. But for us, the context that it becomes is that, okay, we might not have that, but we do have that one thing that we're for sure of, and that's that we have people around us who desperately need God, who desperately need to know that there's a Creator who made them for so much more than the destructive life that they could be leading right And the only tool that people like me and you have to move the mighty hand of God so that this could come about is prayer. Is prayer. And so when we have the proper perspective, as David did, what he's pleading for from God is mercy. Oh, hear me, God. Give us mercy. Don't give to us what we deserve. No. Give to us out of your kindness what we don't deserve, but we so desperately need. And this is why it's so important for us to understand our position before God without Christ, and then our position before God in Christ. Because if you get that, I guarantee you'll understand, God, there's absolutely no way. There's absolutely no way my life could be without you. Because although I can feed myself, although I can clothe myself, although I can bring emotional satisfaction for myself, the one thing that I desperately need, which is to be saved from eternal perishing and from my destructive self, my destructive sinful nature, can only come through your Son Christ. You would never feel like you need to think of yourself as independent from God. I'll have a quick confession for you guys. The days where I am at my worst is the days that I think and constantly act upon thinking that I depend on myself. When I view myself as the guy that's in control, as the guy that has it all together, that is when I am at my worst. But then there are the days, the glorious days, the wonderful days, where I fully understand, God, I can't even take this next breath without you. Where I feel like I am at my best. Where I feel like I serve the world so much more efficiency. You know, walking out of there on Friday, I headed over to a local Chipotle because I was hungry. And I remember sitting there and enjoying my meal and I texted Genesis and I was like, what's up, dude? How's work? She says, good. And I just said to her, man, I feel so grateful to be married to you. And I said other sweet things that only me and her could hear. But it just made me realize, we still got to go out and work every day. I can't take a day off. We still got to go out and make a living. But boy, the God factor. He's transformed the way we even view what's important at home. And boy, is it amazing. We don't live in the nicest house. I paint my own walls. And there's like paint dripping on the bottom thing, which I gotta fix. But boy, we don't feel hopeless. We feel like tomorrow's whatever God wants it to be. And there's this profound peace that just surrounds us. And then I get to meet people. I get to work with, again, business leaders, business owners, all week long, who are just like losing their heads. Not because the bank account is empty, because they can't seem to get their finger on the one thing that will satisfy. And this is why, guys, we need prayer. Because I'm not the only one that knows people. And if I am the only one that knows people like that right now, wait till you get a little bit older. And you start going out into the world and you start realizing, like Ethan was sharing a story with the kids at school. You'll see that plus more as you grow older. And Psalm 102:17, and this is kind of when I want to wrap it up. And again, David writing of these experiences with God, of this relationship with God that seemed to be very, very personal for him. He writes this. He says, "He, speaking of the Lord, shall regard the prayer of the destitute, and shall not despise their prayer." I remember thinking at some point, thinking of God as this so far away being that it was hard for me to understand how I could have this intimacy with the Creator And then which we'll look at more this month, I look at David's life. I'm like, dude, you were messy. David was messy. I mean, if David was alive today, he'd be all over TMZ messy. What a scandalous life. And yet, Almighty God had ears for David, had a heart for David. And then I think about us and I'm like, God, you're not far from us. So this week, I want you to think about the most complicated situations. Either you have, or either people around you have. And I want you to do something. I want you to pray for them. I want you to simply just ask God. And literally, that's been my prayer. Yesterday morning, as I woke up, I was like, okay, God, I am loaded up with all week long, thing after thing. And if it's not directly with work, it has to do with the news, and it has to do with people that I know of. And I just remember yesterday just falling and just thinking, God, if you don't do something about these people's situation, who can? Who will? Literally, this desperation, this hopelessness, just like the people in certain countries who don't know if they're going to eat tomorrow, is sort of how I feel about, I don't know if this man and this woman will be alive tomorrow because they live such destructive lives. And so, this week, think about who you can pray for, who you can approach God about. And I want you to do that. And if you can, if you got some time, I want you to either write down a note about who you're praying for, write out a tweet, text somebody, just write it down. Keep track of who it is that you're interested in and who you're praying for. It doesn't have to be someone you talk to directly. It might be someone just in your surrounding who you know, who you hear, who you observe, like, man, that seems like a very difficult situation. And that you pray for them. Bottom line is, as the church, as the body of Christ, we have an amazing, amazing, amazing tool to be able to change situations and circumstances. And that's prayer. I want to invite you all to join me in on this week of praying for those who you know are going through desperate times. Now, I'll conclude with this. I have a friend named Victor. Victor's a Vietnamese family, was raised part of his life in China, speaks Cantonese, and great guy. And when I came back from Guatemala last week, I got a phone call from one of our other friends, one that knows us closely. And he says, hey, Victor has been unresponsive because we have this group chat. I always recommend group chats for people. We share jokes, we share. It's like, did you see that? Did you watch that? And like right next to me, but it's on the group chat. And then we had been kind of talking on a group chat, and then Victor had been unresponsive, which is unlikely because he's actually the one that's the most active. Normally the unresponsive one is me, and that's because I'm like, oh, sometimes it's just like, I can't reply to that. I can't even open that because I'm not ready to answer it. And Long says to me, our friend says to me, yeah, he's a little bit down right now. I said, what happened? He says, well, I'm going to share this with you, but don't say anything yet until he brings it up. Turns out his 27-year-old girl cousin had committed suicide at his house just a few nights before that. 27 years old. And I think about, I didn't ask for any of the details because I don't want to have someone talk about something so difficult. But I started thinking to myself, what does a 27-year-old young lady have to be thinking that would lead her to taking her own life? Like, what can be on the mind? What can be on the horizon? What can be on the surface and deep down inside that would lead a young lady with so much life to take her own? We don't know what people around us are going through. And this is why. This is why. The most loving and powerful thing we can do is pray. Is literally say, God, only you know what's rocking this person's heart, brain, and so would you just act upon that, God? And like David would plead, I think it's a proper prayer. God, would you just have mercy? The church needs to be a lot more aware of a lot of the painful things that go on in people's lives. I know they don't happen to us as much, but we are almost an exception to the rule. So, let's close out. And if you can think of anyone right now, because I'm closing out with our prayer. Let's all bow our heads, close our eyes. And I'm just going to leave a quick time of silence so that we can think about someone who could be using our prayers right now. And let's pray for them.